Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, I lost track of what I was supposed to be doing there. Thanks for coming to Tuesday's Lunch and Learn. My name is Will. I run our customer site here. We have one pre-submitted question, but I don't think I see that person on yet. Let me grab that. Emmeline. Okay. I'll give the audience a chance to ask questions then. Let's see here. That's the Emmeline question. So as always, if you guys have a question, you can use raise hand. Ask in the Q&A or just type it out in the chat, any or all of the above. Have any questions from the audience today? Okay, I'll go ahead and answer Emmeline's question then. How can I create a custom inbox where the user can take action on their assigned tasks? Great question. The inbox is just a folder that shows you a report of assignments. And in fact, if you click edit, you can always, if you're in the studio, and you want to look at what a report contains, you can always edit that report. So I'm on the inbox folder here. I'm going to click the pencil icon. It's in a slightly different location only on this report as it's a special report. You'll normally see it in the gear icon here on a normal report. But if I click edit, I can see that this is actually a data source for assignment inbox, which isn't really, I probably wouldn't use assignment inbox here. But what we can do is we know that this is a report of assignments and we know that this is a folder. So if I wanted to, let me create a folder here for me to work in. So here's a folder I'm going to work in. So what I'm going to do is create a regular folder here, a normal folder that can be shown, not a designer folder, so it can be shown in the end user portal. And this will be called custom inbox. And then here, what I'll do is I'll go back to my designer folder. I'm going to create a page. On this page, I'm going to put a report viewer. Then on this report viewer, I'm going to create a new report called custom assignments. And then here under data sources, I'm just going to search for assignment. Now you can see assignment inbox is the one we saw before, but I'm just going to use assignment data source here. I couldn't tell you the difference between these two, honestly, as I look at these. So assignment data source. Now, what I can then do is start using a normal report creation, entity name, date, maybe all assignments, they're created on date. I might look at, I don't know, worn date, late date, escalate, expiration date. I can control this how I want. It's just a normal report. But the trick here is under filters. If I click add, because this is an assignment data source, I have assignment filters here. And I can expand assignment filters, and I can say assign to me. And assign to me will always be, assume the context of the current user. And so now, if I save this, and then I save the page that I'm on, and then I do one last step, which is bind that page to the folder. So I'll come to custom inbox, manage, add page dashboard, pick the page. I'll call this all assignments, and I'll pick a page here. This is the page I just created under recents, and save. If I navigate away and back to custom inbox, I now have my custom inbox of assignments here. Now this is how you could just recreate the normal assignment behavior. The normal assignments, the inbox view in a regular folder. Then of course you just give permissions to this folder. Now this is for all assignments. So of course you can apply different filters if you wanted them to create, save different folders for different projects. They might have different types of assignments that come in. Yeah, that is how to build a custom inbox. The second question is, can a decisions use app pool identity instead of local system? You can create custom users to run application, to run application pools as in decisions. Yes, there is no requirement that you use local system. In fact, in our documentation, we should have documentation about, let me search for non-admin, setting decisions to run as a non-admin user. Now in here, do we specifically call out a bunch of missing screenshots, unfortunately, in this doc? Peer application. Yeah, well, this doc's not going to tell us how to set the actual application pools up. But yes, you can absolutely can. You can run decisions as a non-admin user. There's just work you'll have to do from granting permissions. And in this doc specifically, you'll have to do like URL reservations and things that you to allow a particular user to have a reservation to some URLs if you need them to not run as an admin. But there is no requirement that decisions run as local system anywhere. You can absolutely run. Okay, what other questions do we have today? Oh, here we go, something. Okay, so here's a question from Nancy, excuse me. How to import a text file that is pipe delimited with a double quotation in the data? That is a good question. So let's create another folder for ourselves here. Double, or say pipe delimited import. Now, Nancy, I will allow you to talk if you so desire, if I'm getting your example wrong. Let's build a quick flow here. And I need to create a pipe delimited file. I'm gonna do this off screen really quick, so bear with me just a minute. So here's a new, and I'll say email address. So it'll be at decisions.com pipe, pipe will pipe Pedersen pipe, and then I'll do quote Pedersen for like a full name type field. And let me add one more row here, and I'll just name everything. I'll name it's my alter ego Bill. Save this. Sorry, I'm doing this off screen. Bear with me just a minute. I don't have an easy way to do this in the browser window I'm sharing. test.txt. Okay, so first things first, to make it easier for me to test this, I'm going to add some input to my flow called file to process. The type here will be file data. Now I am going to search for import. And find one of my favorite steps, import Excel CSV, I think. Input file type. Because on this, oops, excuse me, I'm collapsing things. I can say vertical bar. Okay, great. So import Excel CSV here. Now this type expects a data type to work. So what I'm going to do is quickly create a flow structure so I can bind the properties of my text file here. I'm going to come into create data types integration, flow structure, and I'll call this pipe file wrapper, I guess, and I'll name something email. I'll name something first name, last name, and I'll name something full name. That should be fine. All strings. So 4 properties, because my file has 4 properties in it. Get a note about some unrelated data type being excluded, so I can ignore that for now. That might be something for us to look at. Right. So I'm going to come back into my flow. Now with this particular step, this is it's a bit of a hassle up front to configure this step, but it's blazingly fast. You can see I've had my successful code compiled there. So my type is ready to use. So output data type, I'm going to search for wrapper. I'm going to find my pipe file wrapper, which is the type I just created. I'm going to specify the number of columns. And now once I do that, I'm going to get my column mapping designer here. Input file type, I'm going to say auto select, start on row 1, 4 columns, worksheet index. I think I can leave blank. File data will be select from flow, file to process, which is with the input I created to my start step. And then column 1 here will be email. Again, you haven't seen my file, so you just have to assume what I'm showing you is correct here. First name. What I'm doing is saying, looking through the order of the pipe delimited string, I created this data type and I'm saying, take this location or this, this column and give me, and then bind it to this particular data type. Oops, I did full name twice. This is supposed to be last name. And then let me go ahead and say done here. So I think I'm ready for a quick test. So I'll save this once since debugging doesn't save. Now I'm going to upload my file, which I saved to my desktop here, which is pipetest.txt. Save it as a unit test so it's easy for me to test again. Name this thing test1 save, and now it's on the left-hand side where I can execute it. So I'll run this. Okay, so I got an error. Less columns error. Actual columns 1. Doesn't like selected. Oh, okay. I have to leave it as CSV maybe. Let's try this again. Vertical bar. Okay, there we go. Now if I look at my output data, there's my data, and you can see. What's an easy way for me to show you the data that I created? I can't. Let me just put it into a Google Doc. Just a minute here. I'm going to do this off screen in case I have anything sensitive. I'm going to copy. This is the file I created. I'm going to show it to you in a Google Doc form. So here's the file I created. I've got, I have a file here. There's 4 properties, each of which is pipe delimited. Will@decisions.com here, pipe Will, pipe Pedersen, pipe full name with double quotes. Now using the setup I just did, I'm able to then get a output from this step with, let me snooze my Slack notifications. Now I have that same data as an output of my step here. So I know that's very fast. Of course, I do move pretty quick on these lunch and learns. We will upload the video so that you can watch this in a more reasonable time. But any questions about what I just did here? Oh, can you show the file before you load so I can see it? Okay, I just did that. Yep, that's your data, only with one double quote, not two. That wasn't quite the example. So you don't want two, you only want a single. So looking here at my data, you want it to be a single quote, just one double quote. Oh, okay. I don't think that that should make a difference, but let me edit my example and confirm. I don't think that that will break anything. I don't think we care about the existence of the quotes, but I could be wrong. Okay, so let me save my file. Create a new unit test. Test 1217, yep. I'll save this as unit test, which is missing closing quote. Save this, or run this. Oh, look at that. Okay, it assumes, interesting. It's considering the lack of the closing quote makes this step assume that everything following it is part of the full name field, which you can see here. Okay. Now, okay, I got it. So if could we assume, for your example, that the existence of an opening quote means that we can add a closing quote? Like, do we need to forcibly update? No, oh, okay, so this could just be ignore quotes or quotes. Do not treat as escaped. Look at that. Let's see what that setting does. So missing closing quote. Okay, didn't seem to ignore quotes. Hmm. Think I don't know what we should do here. It shouldn't be looking at the quotes, but it is. So what would a for each Excel CSV step do here? Compare this behavior. So file input is our file to process. And now what I want to do is I'm just going to use a create data step here just to look at the data. I'm going to declare 4 strings here, str1, str2, str3, str4 for the 4 properties of my thing. And then I'm going to go ahead and map them. So view input mappings, current row, field 1, text value. I'll use the same mapping of okay. And let me debug this. I'll use closing quote again. Error is could not be loaded. Oh, that's right. This probably the step won't. CSV. Common delimiter. Okay. Vertical bar. Debug. Closing quote. There we go. So let me look at the input data. And this assumes one quote. Hmm. Is the quote needed? Could we, can we delete the quote? Yeah, but we can't add a closing quote. I'm not sure if you guys can see the conversation going on in the Q&A section. by the way, everyone else on the call. There's a conversation in the Q&A between myself. Yeah, we could find quotes. Like, so we could do something maybe silly, but if we search for byte, we could get string from bytes. So here we go. Bytes will be the file to process contents. And then we could do a replace text step. So we'll say to replace is quote. This is going to replace everything. It's probably not ideal. The source will be the get string from bytes 1 output, and we replace with an empty space. Because then what we could do is theoretically search for byte again, and we could get bytes from string. And then, if I'm right, we could update our file. So get bytes from string, we'll pass in our replace text 1 output where everything has been replaced. All right, and then we could change value on the file to process contents, update its array. And then let's see what we get. Missing closing quote, run. Oh, look, 2 examples. And there is, you can see it's added this extra space there for that quote that we deleted. So we could scan through a document. We could get strings. We can convert a file to strings, assuming we know it's, has strings, right? You're assuming some things about the file format here. We could search through that string we get, replace every quote with a space, convert that string back to a byte array, update the file we passed in's properties, and then pass it into one of our steps. We can just split text by new line and then split each by pipe and create data dictionary. New line and split by, okay, sure. Yeah, you could do that too. That makes sense. Someone's, I'm gonna, here's an offering in the chat. I don't know if everyone can see the Q&A or not. Split the string by new line and then split by pipe. Not actually use the steps at all. That's a really good suggestion too. I don't know what anonymous attendee typed that in, but that's a good idea also. I would probably say that's probably preferable, as you might want to have some quotes. This would remove all quotes. But I don't think that matters. Yeah, I guess it depends on your use case. Any questions about that? Just give you something to work with, or are we still off base? Answer live on all of these things. They're really big files though. What size? $50 MB. This import Excel CSV step is pretty performant. I don't think that that's a problem. The for each Excel step is not nearly as fast. This should be able to give you that data. I don't think that's, we could kind of do this. I mean, you're going to incur some cost, but I don't think that that's super problematic here. That should, this one, view output data gives you that, yeah. And I don't have an easy way to quickly create a 50 MB file, but I don't. This step is extremely quick. In fact, I could show you some data. I have this data. This is some of the. Let me see here. It is. See if I could show you some of the data I have for this particular, which is performance testing results. Yeah, here we go. Pivot table, core compare. So here we go. So this is some performance data we have about the difference between the for each Excel, the import Excel standard, and the import Excel runtime. We didn't look at runtime, but we're looking at the yellow and the blue bar here. And you can see we can import 10 million rows through that step in, I'd have to actually look at what the actual data here in less than, 250 seconds. So let's call that 180 seconds. What is the best way to have a report of different case types that have common fields, but would have different right-click actions coming from each type and state? Now that is a good question. Before I answer that, that's okay. Like to your second question, Nancy has another question. It'd be great if we could move these to the chat. Just a note, no one else can see these. I need to have, only keep based on that's fine. If you need to run rules, you can loop. You do like a normal loop here, like this step outputs. If we look at, let's collapse these other. This output a list of pipe file wrapper. So you can for each that normally. You can for each the output of that, right, and run a rule against it. So for example, I'll find like a starts, maybe starts, string starts with. Then I could do some quick, just simple example showing you running a rule, but we could write a rule, we could loop that. Now, of course, this is going to make your processing time longer. So you have to look at throughput. Case sensitive is false. The input is going to be the item, which I haven't specified. So I'll pass my list, my collection from the called imported data into my for each step. And that way I can pass in the item dot email, and I'll say starts with W. And I should get one true and one false result here. Miss the closing quote. Yeah, one true, one false result there. So you can loop this data into a rule if you need. And so on the true path, you could add it to a list to keep. On the false path, you could just go back, or vice versa, right? You need to, there's additional looping behavior in the design of your flow that you're implying here that you would need to add. Okay, all right, so moving on here. This is a pretty interesting question. I'm gonna put this into the chat for everyone to see. In fact, I should have done that for Nancy's question earlier, so I apologize. I don't know who asked this question since they asked it anonymously. What is the best way? Maybe it's someone on my team who's building this for something, and they for a customer project, and they want to know how to do this, and they're tricking me into giving them the answer. What is the best way to have a report of different case types that have common fields, but would have different right-click actions? Okay, so you can't do this without writing a query. You're going to have to write a query to union your data together, but I could walk you through this example. I create a new folder here, which is multiple case types in one report. This one's going to take a bit of setup work. I'm going to create two case types here. Anything, this case one, it's going to have two properties, str1, str2. All right. I am going to come back to my folder here. I'm going to create another case entity called case 2. It will also have str1 and str2. Now, the names of the columns don't have to match exactly. We could figure this out. We could use aliases. This is mostly a SQL question about how to union, just to be clear. Not really, there's just no way to do this by default in decisions. So I'm gonna create a folder here called data just to give myself a place to put this stuff in. Refresh to get my actions to update. All right, and then data, I'm gonna add entity user defined case 1 called case, I'll name this thing case 1, and string 1 will be hello, and string 2 will be world. And in data, I'm also going to add a case 2, name this thing case 2. This thing will be bellow, and this will be twirl. Have that. So first things first, I need to write a query to union these two together. So I'm going to use my query editor. The query editor is available on designer folders from right-click, other query editor, and I'm going to find my folder. If I search for case, it will be here. And my query editor lets me insert a table name. And I'm going to use that insert table name on both of these. Okay, so then I'm going to say select str1, comma, str2 from this guy. And if I run that, I should get one row with hello and world. All right, and I'm going to have to on my other screen look up a union example because I have not done that in a second. SQL union operator. Okay, it is just simple as that. Great. So then I'm going to say union, going to copy this, and I'm going to replace the table name. This is all SQL stuff, just to be clear. None of this is decision specific stuff. Hello world, bellow twirl. There we go. So what I'm going to do is I need to include the ID of the object. So I think we name this, hold on. Let me say star. I bet this. Let me do star on both of these. Entity ID, I think, is the folder ID. So I'm going to include entity ID. And I need this ID for these actions. The action context you're asking about. All right, so those bellow, hello, that's great. So copy this. Now, I'm just going to duplicate my tab just in case I lose this string. I'm in my folder. I'm going to create a database integration. So, because I need to write, I don't actually need to create a database integration. I just need to add a query to my local database. So I'm going to click add query, keep local connection. I'm going to come in here, put my query in, and say, name this thing multiple cases. I'll run my query, check my results. Looks good. Click OK. This is going to compile a query for me now. As a query object, you'll see it here under database query definition. So then I can create a report. I can then use my query in my report. So if I open up common, I open up local connection, and I find multiple cases, I can add entity ID string 1 and string 2. Then the last piece here is under actions. I can come in and I can click override action context. The action context I want here is actually going to be folder, framework service layer services folder. Now, the important question here is, how would you know this? And there is no way to know that. There'd be no way to know this. Unfortunately, you just have to know what item to use here. But it's a different question for you asking our support team, what's the action context to use for this example versus walk me through this entire build, if you will. I'll select folder, and while I needed the ID is action context ID. So I'm going to run this report and right click, and then you can see I have some stuff there. So what I'm going to do to make this example a little better is go to case 1, and I'm going to say user action, create user action. I'll call this thing case 1 action, and I'm not going to actually build this flow. I'm just going to create a flow and leave it disconnected and blank. And I'm going to go to case 2, user action. These are like our custom actions on our cases, right? Certain actions we want to show. Let's call this case 2, custom action. I'm going to save this. And if I come back to my report and I right click and run it, I should have case 2 action, case 1 action. I name those differently, but you can see the example there. Now you can have one report with lots of different folders. Now you can do this, like you only need to use this union data if you want to actually show some data in line. If you want to just use a folder data source and use just the data on a folder, you could also do that. Another example, if I created a report here, would be use the folder data source. If I just search for folder, find folder data source. Here I could use like entity name and even like folder ID, which is the ID we saw. I could add a filter. I could say in folder, and I would say for current folder. You can see I get some extra folders here, and I could run this. And this report will inherit the action context automatically. Oh, not for current folder. That's the wrong folder. I'm sorry. I'm going to specify the folder. So in folder, for folder, I can pick the folder, which would be all my apps. 621. And there's our 2 folders. So I can run this report. I can then get my case 1 and case 2 actions. Any questions about that? Again, I don't know who asked that question. Anonymous attendee, but does that help? Does that help? I'll assume it does. Okay, great, wonderful. So whichever of the people that I work with that I just helped, you're welcome. Just kidding. Anybody else have any other questions for us today? Those are some good questions. Okay, going once, going twice. Okay. All right, I think that's everything. I don't see any other questions or hands. Sort of last call here. Where's my exit? There we go. All right, if that's everything, then we'll go ahead and call it a day. Thanks for the questions, everyone. Maru, who's going to be here for tomorrow and Thursday?
Tomorrow we have Dylan Roberts from Professional Services, and on Thursday we have Kevin Harvey from the Pre-Sales Engineering team.
Okay, wonderful. All right, thanks everybody. Have a great afternoon or a great evening.